Now, our next speaker has been researching ancient symbolism for many, many years. She has been travelling widely, mainly with me and to various other places, but especially we've both been researching the work around the Taztepala culture of Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and that general area. And JJ's research has really taken it to a whole other level, so I'm delighted she's sharing a brand new research with you at this conference. So please give a warm welcome to JJ Ainsworth.
So I'm going to speak about archaeo and astro-mythology and its possible place in ancient cultures, particularly to the builders of Göbekli Tepe, because of the symbolism that's found at the site. Göbekli Tepe is an ancient site more than 11,000 years old, located in the Şanlıurfa province of Turkey. It's just one of the many Taztepala sites in the region. Ancient myths can and have been reconstructed by linguistic analysis, by etymologists, linguists, and philologists. They study the history of languages, especially by looking closely at literature and oral traditions. They can figure out some of the earliest forms of myths by comparing stories from around the world to each other. It is a scientific process and a very accurate one. This chart shows the various migration routes of the Proto-Indo-European language, and with the migration of the ancient myths traveled along it as well. Myths were teaching tools. They might tell an engaging story, but for our purposes here today, the myth I'm going to read to you also tells you where to look in the night sky. Imagine yourself at night inside the structures at Göbekli Tepe. Fires lit with an at least 20,000-year-old primordial creation tale being told. So I'm going to read a reconstruction of one of the oldest myths in the world that came all the way down to Anatolia from the Russian steppes. I'll read it right now. Before there was time, before the beginning, there was darkness. And from the darkness, time began. And when time began, so the cosmos produced fire and ice. This was the beginning of the cosmos. And within it, two brothers were formed, twins. Their names Manus, which means man, and his giant brother Yimo. And Yimo means twin. And with them was a giant cow. Through time, gods were created, both good and chaotic. And through the cosmos, they all traveled. Through the eons, they lived, grew, and traveled until the brothers decided that they needed a home, a world on which to live, to inhabit, to create a place of order from the chaos in the cosmos. But to create this world, a sacrifice had to be made. And so it was that Yimo agreed to be sacrificed, and Manus killed Yimo. Yimo, the first dead man, became king of the dead, and his realm he opened for all those who followed after. And this was the first death, and so death was introduced into the cosmos. Manus descended to the world, and there became the first priest. And so he slew the great cosmic bull with whom he traveled through the cosmos for eons. And in doing this, he taught ritual sacrifice, as this would allow the world and everything inside and outside of it to be kept in order. Manus cut Yimo's body into pieces, and from these he created the sun, the moon, the sea, the stars, the winds, and earthly fire. From this dismemberment of Yimo, it was his flesh that became the earth, his hair grass, his bones yielded stones, his blood water, his eyes the sun, his mind the moon, his brain the clouds, his breath the wind, his head the heavens. And Manus, having killed the great bull, dismembered it and watched on as all living animals came from its body, one springing forth from another, and so on. And all edible plants were created too. And all this nourishing the people of the land and causing the earth to become fertile. And finally, Manus created the people. And the first was Trito, and Trito means third. As Manus had sacrificed his twin, Yimo, to Skyfather, the gods showed their approval and gave cattle to Trito, a gift to allow people to be rich in food and materials, and all seemed good. But on this world, chaos had been waiting and had found a home there. And the people's cattle were stolen under cover of night in a treacherous move by the three-headed, six-eyed serpent Ingwe. Trito was not strong enough to fight off the serpent, and so in time he made a sacrifice to the storm god, offering his ritual drink to gain the god's strength for a fight with the evil serpent. And the storm god was pleased and came to the world and offered to go with Trito to fight Ingwe. And so together they traveled far into the mountains, beyond the borders of their land, to retrieve the cattle. When they arrived at the serpent's cave, they together battled Ingwe, that chaotic three-headed serpent, and eventually slew him, allowing Trito to bring the cattle home. With the cattle free and back on the land of the people, Trito was recognized as the first warrior and hunter, a hero that the people needed, and he was celebrated for recovering the wealth of the people and ensuring the priests received cattle for sacrifice to thank the gods for all they have done for them. And so Manus created a sacrificial fire, and over it killed a bull, offering it to the gods, the flames and smoke reaching high into the sky. There Skyfather and the other gods received that sacrifice, ensuring their share, keeping the gods content, encouraging them to keep chaos away, and in return the gods continued to give cattle to the people. Manus continued to sacrifice, and a new king was crowned. He was also called Yimo, and he was prepared to sacrifice himself to keep the people safe and the land fertile. And Trito continued to keep the cattle safe. This cattle sacrifice ensured the fertility of earth and all living things upon it, and it kept the cosmos in order. So I think that myth I just read to you is speaking about a specific area of the sky. The divine twin Yimo is Gemini, and who was possibly two beings in one in some of the earliest myths. Many figures that we might recognize as Siamese-type twins have been found at these Tepe sites in Turkey. So we know for sure there's a possibility that they have been looking at Gemini in this manner. These have been found at Çatalhöyük, Kol Tepe, and Karahan Tepe, a site close to being 12,000 years old. All those three sites are in Turkey. The other artifact is from Ain Gezel in Jordan, dated to about 9,500 years. So the concept of twins as being special existed during that time and definitely could represent Gemini. And Manus, the brother of the giant androgynous twin Yimo, is Orion, who became the first priest after having slayed the cosmic bull. Gemini is located on the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun and other planets, and this means the sun passes through this constellation at the same time each year. Castor and Pollux are twin half-brothers in Greek mythology. One is birthed from a king of earth and one born of a god. And I'm going to quote this. Their mother was Leda, but they had different fathers. Castor was the mortal son of Tyndareus, the king of Sparta, while Pollux, the brightest star, was the divine son of Zeus, who raped Leda in the guise of a swan, which, as Andrew Collins has pointed out, may be Cygnus. The two brothers shared many adventures together. They even accompanied the Argonauts and their leader Jason in search of the Golden Fleece. However, during this journey, a serious conflict arose, and only the immortal Pollux survived. In painful mourning for Castor, Pollux asked Zeus to let him share his own immortality with his twin to keep them together, and they were transformed into the constellation Gemini. Though accounts of their birth are varied, they are often said to have been born from an egg. By the time the Gemini story reached Rome, several changes were made. The bovine had transformed into a wolf. This wolf allowed the brothers Romulus and Remus to suckle its milk as infants, ensuring their survival. Eventually, again, fratricide occurs, with Romulus killing Remus and creating the city of Rome. The divine Mayan hero twins represent complementary forces such as sun, moon, life, and death. These hero twins are bird hunters, and while fighting the god's 7 macaw, one twin loses an arm, they challenge the gods to a game to retrieve the head and body of their father from the underworld. The gods pull many tricks on them and try to kill the twins. The gods succeed, but the twins are brought back to life in a river, probably the Milky Way. The twins win and destroy the gods. The game is known to be a religious event of creation that they saw as core to their continued existence. At Chichen Itza, on the wall of the ball court, there's a panel which shows the Mayan creation myth. A player is decapitated, and in its place rise 7 blood snakes, each representing the central elements of creation. The creator god of maize, who lives in a ball court in the underworld, is kind of like the green man who resurrects every winter solstice. When players moved along the ball court, they were interacting with the creative deity, encouraging him in the game of creation. As the player in the above image is killed, it again reiterates that creation must have a sacrifice in order to produce. So we have the number 7, possibly for the heavenly bodies along the ecliptic. The Maya hero twins are Gemini, and the 7 macaw as the Pleiades, because remember in this Mayan creation myth, the twins were bird hunters. And as Gemini sits on the ecliptic near the Pleiades, and the fact that the Pleiades are almost always associated with birds and females makes it quite clear that the twin bird hunters were Gemini in my mind, going up against the Pleiades. Another name given to the ball court was Tlachtli, the looking place, leading to the idea that under specific conditions, the area may have been used to show the perpetual motion of the heavenly bodies. So there's a cosmological aspect in the game as well. Another story of creation, death, and rebirth. The shape of the ball court itself resembles the special symbols on the belts of the central twin pillars in enclosure D from Göbekli Tepe. This H-type symbol is found all over the world, though a lot of people don't realize this. This is an artifact from the Rique culture of the highlands of Peru, and here the symbol on the head above the eyes is the H, and also the figure is carved to resemble an egg shape. In Zoroastrianism from ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, Ahura Mazda created the world and the primordial bovine of Zoroastrianism, cosmogony and cosmology, and he set everything in motion. The primordial bull was killed by Angra Mainyu for no reason other than that he could. Gavavadatta's corpse is taken to the moon and purified, and from the bull's purified seed, all animals come into being. Here the bovine is killed also by someone with a similar name to Manus from the earlier myth I read, Angra Mainyu. And we'll find this theme throughout myths if you pay attention. On Crete, King Minos, which is another play on the older name Manus, ordered young noble citizens, 7 young men and 7 maidens, to be offered as sacrificial victims to the half-human, half-taurine monster Minotaur, who was eventually killed by Theseus. So 7, 7, and a sacrifice again, and Theseus would be Orion. There are tons of myths with the same motif around the world, and I do believe all these ancient stories are pointing to that same area of the sky containing Gemini, Orion, and Taurus. They were teaching about the cosmos through memorable stories that were passed down through many millennia, migrating across the world. The ecliptic is the orbital plane of Earth around the sun. From the observer on Earth, the sun's movement around the celestial sphere over the course of a year marks out a path along the ecliptic against the background of stars. The ancient Greeks believed that souls reside in the Milky Way River between incarnations, and that there were 2 gates on the Milky Way. They believed the Golden Gate, or Sagittarius Gate, was where souls ascend after death. The Silver Gate of Gemini and Taurus were the constellations through which souls descend to Earth. This gate is also known as the Gate of Man, and these constellations lay opposite each other. So I think at Göbekli Tepe, enclosure D, the ancients were pinpointing the Silver Gate between Gemini and Taurus, specifically Geminis and the Pleiades in Taurus, and let's talk about why. If you were at Göbekli Tepe at about 9600 BC, and you were standing between the central pillars of enclosure D staring south, the same way the pillars are facing, in the night sky you would see where the virtual ecliptic line passes through the Pleiades and Gemini, meaning you will see over time the planets, sun, and moon orbiting along it. A pretty good astronomical observation point. And that's an image on Stellarium from 9600 BC. And this would be the same time except around the winter solstice. So let's study the symbolism here. The pendant on pillar 18, one of the central pillars, twin pillars from Göbekli Tepe, enclosure D, seems to show two beings holding hands, and I postulate this is the constellation of Gemini, since all the planets as well as the moon and the sun, which is shown below Gemini in the above image, always move very closely along the virtual line of the ecliptic. All these orbiting bodies are regularly passing through something known as the Golden Gate of the ecliptic, which I'll go into in a minute. In the crook of the arm, the pillar holds a Canis. So let's look at what Gemini is doing in the night sky. Its Canis Minor, which could have been seen as a fox during the time of Göbekli Tepe, is right next to Gemini, on the same pillar with what I postulate is Gemini. The symbolism found at the bottom of the same pillar shows 7 birds, or chicks of some sort. These may represent the Pleiades. The Pleiades star cluster is known to be the 7 sisters, 7 chicks, and almost always female, as I mentioned. And some of the stories about the Pleiades are the oldest as well. Some are over 20,000 years old. And the Aborigines of Australia knew them as the 7 sisters. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. The ancients were very clever, and sometimes I think it's best to not overthink their symbolism. I think they clearly showed us what they were doing and where to look, and they created amazing stories in order to draw your attention to where to look in the night sky. The other central pillar in enclosure D is pillar 31, and on its pendant is a bull, and I believe this T-pillar to represent Manus or Orion, and it may portray him having slayed the cosmic bull, hence the necklace. And I believe these pillars are holding their stomachs in an act of showing rebirth or pregnancy or fertility. Because in the myth, once Manus slayed the cosmic bull, all animals and edible plants were created from it. So the ancient Hittites of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, used a writing system we call today hieroglyphic Luwian. From the previous panel, this hieroglyph set shows a symbol for Deus, or God. I again think this possibly may represent Gemini twins born from an egg. And below the symbol for God is a bull's head, probably the Taurus constellation. And that symbol is very similar to what is displayed on the central pillars of enclosure D. I think the God symbol in the egg-shaped circle represents Gemini and the bull's head Taurus, making up the place of the ecliptic and the silver gate, the gate of rebirth. Follow the path from Gemini to Taurus to the silver gate, or the gate of man. I descend back to earth, the path of rebirth. Not only that, but if you look from above the enclosures at Göbekli Tepe, they also somewhat resemble the hieroglyph meaning God. Just something to think about. Look, see the gateway, the entry point back to earth. Looking to the north and see the ascension journey of the soul through the golden gate. Look to the south to the silver gate and be reborn. And like the myth I read in the beginning, Orion slaying the cosmic bull is a necessary act of creation, as life bursts forth from the bull's dead body, a sacrifice that must take place in order for the cycle of life to continue. Enclosure D shows us a full circle of life, death, and rebirth of the soul. The builders of Göbekli Tepe seem to know about something called the Golden Gate of the Ecliptic, which is an asterism in the constellation Taurus that has been known for several thousand years. The asterism is built by the 2 eye-catching open star clusters of the Pleiades and the Hyades that form the 2 posts of a virtual gate at the 2 sides of the ecliptic line that goes through many constellations that include Gemini, which you can see in the night sky at winter and summer at 9600 BC from Shanli-Urfa, which is where, Göbekli is located. When I kind of understood what was going on here, I was quite astonished. So this might be the oldest known representation of the Golden Gate of the Ecliptic in enclosure D, the twin pillars there. This is another example of the ancients marking the Golden Gate of the Ecliptic. This limestone tablet was found at a site in Malta, which I visited, called Tal Kadi. It's about 4,500 years old, so quite younger than Göbekli Tepe, but still interesting. The site's in ruins, and there isn't much left to see, unfortunately. So this is the Tau Keti sky tablet matched to the starry sky, with the ecliptic line showing the Pleiades and Taurus prominently, and the virtual line would continue through to Gemini. This is another example of how the Tau Keti sky tablet may have been used to measure the ecliptical latitude of the moon and planets. Also, this androgynous twin deity from the ancient site of Jagra on Malta is most likely representing the same thing as well, which one of my friends and guests, Katie Montañez, pointed out while we were on a trip in Malta. What is also interesting is they also use the H symbol on altars in Maltese temples, just like at Göbekli Tepe. Perhaps it is representing Gemini, or the path that the souls have to travel after dying. In one Greek tale, Ophiuchus tramples on Scorpio at the Golden Gate, and having received the elixir of life from the serpent, restores Orion to life at the Silver Gate. Maybe the H-like symbol is a simplistic way of showing us the path the soul must take in order to be reborn. The gateways on either side and the path in between. So now I want to talk a little bit about the Saybirch panel, which is at the bottom of this slide. It's about 11,000 years old and is part of a newly excavated Testepler site located in Turkey. It's also showing a version of the myth I read earlier relating to Gemini, Orion, and Taurus. The slaying of the bull for the fertility of the earth and all living things was necessary to keep order in the cosmos. The seal at the top is from the Indus Valley. It's about 3300 BC, and it too is showing the same type of symbolism. So the tradition of slaying the bull continued on for thousands and thousands of years, barely changing its aspect, which is absolutely amazing. And that's it. And Hugh's going to come on next. Thank you.